Good morning and hello to episode 4 of the Dutiful Future show. If you just heard what that ad was, it said we have amazing guests, and that's never been more true.
Oh my goodness.
With my guest, Seb.
I'm already blushing.
Seb.
We've only started, 10 seconds in and I'm already blushing. Oh my goodness. Flustered.
He loves it. What can I say? I'm a charmer.
He loves it. Yeah.
Hello, Seb.
Yeah,
Who
how
are
you
you?
doing?
What do you do?
Who am I? What do I do? So I'm a second year PACE student. So I was born in Southend, lived in Essex for the first 18 years of my life. So if I start swearing, you'll know it's cultural, not personal.
Oh, yeah, but we're going to have a hard upfront, please no swearing.
Please no swearing, yeah, exactly.
Don't get my show cancelled on episode 4. And Seb, you don't really know what you're here to talk about today,
No,
do you?
I don't. I specifically asked, so I'll apologise in advance if this podcast or this show turns into a little bit bad. It'll be because I haven't prepared anything.
Seb, it can never be bad. The Dutiful Future show can never be bad.
That's true. You can just carry me.
So
I hope your back's
when
not
Seb
hurting.
when Seb asked to be on, because of course he asked to be on. He said,
how
I asked
exclusive
him.
you
I
are.
asked, of course. I asked him, okay, Seb, what do you want to talk about? And he gave me one word. He said religion, and I said, okay, Seb, I'll make some stuff for you. Like, what topics do you want? He said, don't tell me. I'm going to go in blind. So we have 3 segments here of all focused around religion. Quite grandiose topics, I'd say, for someone going in blind, and I'm excited.
Yeah. So don't expect us to solve anything.
Yeah. So first, Seb, we're going to solve everything.
We're gonna solve
the meaning of
everything,
life.
Yeah.
Who Jesus was.
Who was Jesus?
Don't worry, we'll get to that.
He's in there. That's what it is.
We were all, he was inside us all
We were
along.
all, yeah.
We're all Jesus. Okay, so let's just start this off nice and easy. Seb, tell me about your relationship with religion.
Oh, my relation. Oh, this is very good.
Who are you? What are your religions? Your little journey? Where are you now?
Did you know that my dad is a minister?
I did not know that.
You didn't know that?
I did not know
As in,
that.
it's quite a liberal Christian church. It's called the United Reformed Church. Shout out to my homies.
Shout out to the United Reformed Church.
So I was raised as a Christian. So for me, religion's always been a part of my upbringing, even if perhaps I haven't always followed it as diligently as my dad would have liked. But don't get me wrong, as in he never forced it on me, and that's one thing I'm quite thankful for. It's been quite a liberal view of religion, and so sort of as you get older, of course, you kind of think about things more, and it kind of loses its relevance because you get stuck more in. And then at the start of this year, so this academic year, I read one book on Buddhism, and I don't want to be really sort of a white guy on his gap year. But it did sort of it changed. It had a profound impact on me.
It spoke to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
What specifically was it about Buddhism in this book that you read, which really, I guess, made you pay attention?
Made me pay, yeah, because that's the difficulty, isn't it? It was the thing is that I've thought a lot of these thoughts before that they said in the book, and it was nice knowing that someone else had thought these thoughts, and I started practicing, doing the meditation and stuff, and I felt an impact in my life. Now, whether you want to put that down to spiritual influences or what, I'm not sure. That's just how I was raised, so I attribute that to a spiritual thing. So I'm not sort of Buddhist, I guess, in the sense that I'm just doing the meditation. I do follow the spiritual stuff a little bit more. But yeah, so it kind of spoke to me. It reflected my own life experience, and so it was better for me than Christianity, because a lot of Christianity for me had those connotations of my dad trying to wake me up on a Sunday morning to get me to go to church, and so that's not bad, but it just means that I have to sort of, it's harder for me to get to the core message if I have to untangle it through almost my childhood, sort of angry against parents rather than actually what does it do?
Teen angst.
Yeah, my teen angst, rather than what does it actually do for me? So
maybe you could say perhaps this sort of journey has been born out of a more sense of an independence. Because I guess since you had quite, as you would say, you had, with your father being a minister and everything, you went to church and stuff.
Yeah.
You had quite a structured religious upbringing, so that really didn't fit you. But now, after you read this book, and you sort of felt like a lot of your ideas, which were now aligned into like a consistent sort of ideology or a framework, that allowed you to explore your spirituality.
Because for me, it's always been
more individually.
Absolutely. And I could get to the message, because that's the thing. So I quite frequently go to mass with one of my friends. Shout out to Luke Cooley.
Shout out to Luke Cooley.
Yeah, big man.
He's obviously listening.
Yeah, he's
loves the show.
not.
How dare you, Seb?
He's probably still asleep.
We're on Spotify now. I forgot to plug that. We're on Spotify.
Oh my goodness, you did. So shout out to Rohill.
Shout out to Rohill and Luke Cooley, who will definitely be listening on Spotify.
On Spotify. That's so true. Wow, how did you get it on Spotify?
For those of you who can't see, I'm audibly tapping my nose and saying it's a trade secret.
It's a trade secret, yeah.
Anyway, sorry, you were saying. I got distracted by my plug.
Yeah, I got capitalism strikes again.
We'll pause Buddhism for a second. Let me talk about my podcast.
Forget about the actual stuff. Let's just go on from it. Yeah.
No.
I can't remember actually. What was
about sort of being able to explore a religious context more individually.
Yeah. So it's one of those ones where. So I was talking about mass, wasn't I? So I go to mass with my friend, and it's one of those ones where you can see the message behind it, but you've almost got 2,000 years of doctrine and dogma that can be quite helpful for people. I don't want to sort of shaft it and be like, I'm Buddhism supreme, enlightened, other religions are, because that's not, that's completely against what even Buddhism says. But it's one of those ones where I don't personally find it helpful, because I've always got that emotional reaction. There's a lovely hymn, and then someone will bring up the devil, and I'm like, oh, here we go again. I'm seeing Dante's Inferno, hellfire, and I can understand, that they're not actually talking about the winged dude, with horns on his head and stuff like that. Yeah, it's symbolism. It's a way of saying, that in your own life, it's a way of personifying those, evil thoughts, if you want. But for me, there is that sort of emotional reaction to it, to where it's not useful for me. It's one of those things I almost have to process before I do get into that, because there is sort of a little bit of prejudice. The moment we start talking about hell, anyone who's not Christian is going to hell, and that's like, oh goodness gracious, you've lost me.
It can almost it gets very I guess identitarian and like us versus them.
Well, it's about exerting power then, isn't it? And that's sorry, I don't know what other topics we've got.
So I don't know. Keep going.
But that's for me when religion becomes about power. Because if you want to talk about God, and let's not let's throw the word around God. We're talking about a concept of God as like a supreme being. We're not talking about a man in the sky sort of with a beard,
white
sort
guy,
of American accent, yeah. And I think when you've got a supreme being who's let's just presume he's all powerful, what is the greatest show of love and kindness that he can give is free will. He has all the power, but he never uses it. And so when religion becomes part of that using of power as a way of control, coercion, even if it is for the ends justify the means, kind of as long as we save everyone's soul,
to save them,
then it becomes you're sort of pushing the horse pushing the cart before the horse.
Well, I can't help but think about the I believe it was Karl Marx who said religion is just what was it? It's something like opioids for the masses.
The opiate of the masses. That's what it's that very basic
a system of social control.
It's a system of it's not about the individual. It's not about me expressing my own liberty in a way that helps and furthers the development of my consciousness. It's more about that you go to church or you bad and we burn you. And even if it's not that, there is that stuff these days. I mean, with the gay marriage stuff, all of that. That's it's just about it's reflecting the cultural norms of a time that doesn't exist anymore. And it's just a way of exerting power. That's.
Could you say that your opinions on these issues would almost manifest themselves into an opposition against organised religion as a concept, and a much more, I guess we'd say, individual, spiritual, exploratory...
That's where you've got to think about, does organised religion innately use and abuse power? I think you can have an organised religion full of enlightened individuals or godly individuals or whatever you want to call it. I don't think the organisation itself is necessarily a problem, but I don't think humans are terribly great, and given and particularly with this stuff, because you have moral superiority, don't you? And that's, of course, against everything, because I don't remember Jesus saying, I'm better than all of you. But there is that tendency to subtly influence and put yourself on a pedestal. So I don't think I set myself against organised religion generally, but I think there is a tendency within organised religion towards sort of concentrating and locking in power.
Could you say that rather than saying organised sorry, rather than saying organized religion as a concept in general is bad, it's like if there were, let's say, like there's 20 people, they live on an island, they just hang out together, they have a religion, they do their thing.
Started an island example.
Could the problem?
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
Could the problem not be when they appoint someone to be, the de facto leader or the person who's in charge when that power is actually a thing?
Because obviously, you think about it, there's always been people in charge in that sense. It's about how, because obviously, I don't think the Buddha, he was obviously in charge, but I don't think, inverted commas, but I don't think, he abused that. So abused that power. I don't think he even used power. He simply just lived his life and other people followed because it's the same with Jesus. Jesus did his own thing and people followed because, he was just kind of, he led by example, not because he sort of guilted or coerced anyone into it.
But could you say that could you say there's a difference between having someone be in charge like the Pope, where he's like, he's put into a position and he dictates certain things. The examples of Buddha or Jesus are, like you said, they're just people living their lives. They're not technically leaders. Yeah. They're just an example.
That's an interesting question.
Even then, it's less of an organised concept.
It's can you be godly in a position as the Pope, where you are wielding a great deal of power? Does the institution lend itself inherently towards a wielding of power in a way that, I don't think a carpenter from Nazareth perhaps would have wanted? I'm not sure. Yeah. I think... that's a difficult one because I think I like the present Pope. I don't know how you feel about it. I like him.
I have pretty much zero opinions on any Pope.
On any Pope. As far as popes go, he's not bad.
I'm sure, I've heard he's relatively liberal for a Pope. I think. Yeah,
he is.
That's what I've heard.
He's good value, I think.
Yeah.
Have you seen Two Popes Netflix as well?
I haven't actually. I've heard it's very good.
Yeah, it's good fun. I mean, it's not sort of true or historical. But
I've heard it's good.
It's a very good film. So that's what for me where it's where the Catholic Church, I think it is. I mean, have you seen the debate between like Stephen Fry and a Catholic
I believe
bishop?
So, yeah.
Where it's like, is the Catholic Church a force for evil or a force for good?
Yeah.
It's one of those ones where I don't believe it's by purpose bad, but I feel like it does act itself out because it's about protecting the institution.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And when you're within that institution, even though he's the Pope, even though he's the head of it, is he forced almost by circumstance to do things that are not perhaps the most enlightened? I'd say so, yeah, absolutely.
One could say that there's a balancing act between maintaining the reputation in order to maintain the religion, but then also not doing things which are morally abhorrent, like spending billions on covering for dodgy priests.
Losing yourself in the idea of the religion and not actually seeing what is. It's the problem where it's like, I don't want the Catholic Church to go down, so I will protect it at all costs. And that's, and maybe you should want to protect the Catholic Church, but at the same time, if protecting it means you compromise everything any moral dignity, once you fall down that slope, then perhaps it's not worth it,
the ends justifying the means. When in this case, it certainly isn't, because they've lost sight of the end. The end is not to enlighten people and to be, an actual religion. It's to maintain themselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of grown out of itself. Instead of helping people, it is a person. We've got to protect the institution even above people, and that's sort of theologically. I wouldn't agree with that, but
Interesting. What's also interesting is so me and you, I'd say we'd have relatively similar in terms of like religious upbringing. My family were Catholic, I guess, but they weren't that
Catholic,
big on it.
Yeah.
But I obviously had to go to church twice a week in school.
Oh, did you have to?
Yeah, I had to. Yeah.
So I'll just add, I wasn't actually like when I say the fear of my dad waking me up.
No, of course.
I wasn't forced. There was just like there was subtle pressure there. Of course. But it's not. I was never. That's why I'm very thankful, because my mum comes out of quite a liberal German tradition of Christianity. Martin Luther, big up. So that was definitely that kind of more liberal stream. But yeah, so sorry.
And I would say that our branching paths out of earlier religious experience have been quite different. So whilst you took a very mature approach and you said, well, this hasn't really agreed with me, I'll explore other paths, found a more individual thing. I basically went, all right, I'm done with this. That's gone. And
Fair enough.
And
I mean, it's one of those ones where you have got to do what I can't come here and force you to read a Buddhist book. You know, that's so you can only act on your own experience.
I would say like there were definitely certain moments in our chapel when I was presented with what I would consider to be like I guess like unforgivable and ridiculous circumstances. I'm like, right, this whole thing is ridiculous.
Yeah. Can you just explain one of those?
We had a woman come in, right, and she was talking. She did 3 talks. She did them on like it was like money, sex, and power, or something like that. Those were the 3 things.
Oh, that's a fun.
Those were the 3 things she talked about.
Yeah.
And during the second
to
week,
a religious,
in a religious context.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, and in the second week. It was the Power Week actually. The Power Week, she turned up and she had a like an extension cord, right, one of those white ones, and she had it in her hand and she said, right,
of course it was a white one.
Of course it was. If she said, if you do good things, right, but not in the name of God, you're like an extension cable plugged into yourself. You're not acting properly. And I looked at her and I laughed very loudly in the middle of this chapel.
That's one of those ones where you're getting so tied up with the conception of God that you're losing what actually it's like, you know, I don't think doing good, you know, obviously it matters the motivation. I think so, but you know, I don't think if I proclaim loudly I am doing this for God, I'm doing it for my own ego.
You're doing it for you to get into heaven, even in its most like, you know.
If I loudly proclaim I'm doing everything for God, it seems to be a strange contradiction. Why am I saying that? I'm not really saying it to. I shouldn't need to proclaim it if I truly am doing it for God.
I think a lot of things like that are why personally I would say I'm anti-organized religion.
Anti-organized,
like I think inherently it's been a like a negative concept. I think that's sort of been a repeated thing, but I am all for and love, particularly like your specific story of like, I read this book and it was great, and I've started doing things more. And I think it's institutions of religion and you know, a lot of institutions that I'm not a fan of. It's not something specific.
Absolutely, because what I appreciate now, because obviously I said that I go to mass, is that I can now, because I'm almost from an outside position, I can go back in and I can appreciate things from it. So before, where I would sit there and be like, oh, blah blah blah, Jesus doing this, Jesus doing that, oh, you know, we got a little bit about, you know, some dubious stuff about marriage, here we go, you know. Whereas now I can just appreciate it for what it is, that people find value in that. I can't see the value in it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, you know. And I think that's quite an important thing, both ends of the argument, because you've got you know, atheists saying, you know, I don't experience this, therefore it's not true for you. Religious people saying, I experience this, I don't experience this, therefore it's not true for you. And neither one is necessarily wrong or right. They're both acting on their own experience, and that's all you can do in those.
I think situations. To play the devil's advocate, generally, what people say when you have a religious person that says, well, just because you haven't experienced it obviously doesn't say it's real. I've commonly heard the argument, I don't know how an airplane flies, doesn't mean I can just say it's God. You could say that it's a knowledge concept. Could you say like perhaps it's just the fact we haven't gotten there yet?
I don't know whether it's something that because it's that you know, when I meditate, I sit there in silence. I can sort of hear my thoughts rushing around. Then after about 10-15 minutes, I just get like a quietness, a stillness. Now, like I said, whether you want to attribute that to God or my inner
spiritual
Buddha,
or psychological,
exactly.
or you know, for example.
But I am capable of achieving that state of silence, and if I could sustain that throughout my life, would I be enlightened then? But you know, is that what it is? Perhaps. And so, whether you want to attribute spiritual things, or is that just sort of, you know, just chemical, just the fact of. But if you want to attribute something mystical to that, I don't see. You know, that's just how I was raised. That's how I shall pursue it.
Yeah.
But
one can easily say there's not really, it doesn't matter how someone interprets it. If it works for you and it's a positive thing on your life, then you know.
And we as humans
doesn't really matter.
purely logical beings. I don't think. We need that emotional stuff. I mean, the greatest expression is art. You'll have one piece of art and you can get 1,000 different interpretations from it,
course.
and none of them are necessarily wrong. I mean, very rarely will you get an artist actually saying this is what it means.
This is what it is,
because it's entirely subjective.
A lot of the point of art is to be.
And so whenever I think of this, I think of God and Buddha and all of that stuff. It's the example of I think everyone's sort of chiseling at a mountain. They're all coming at different angles. God will never encompass what God actually is, or what Buddha actually is, or what supreme conscious, or whatever you want to call it. Because it's outside of human understanding. But we're all chiseling at a mountain, sort of. At different angles, trying to get somewhere. Trying to find the purpose or the meaning, the meaning of what is.
That will go very well into the next segment.
Oh, is it? Oh,
and I am now going to give us a chance to meditate for precisely 3 minutes and 24 seconds.
Oh my goodness, that is such a segue. That is so clean.
with the artist, the 1975, the song "Me and You Enjoy."
I'm so glad you told me that the mic was live during that.
I pointed at it and you gave me a look like, it is 10:26. Yes, well done.
And then I was like, oh, the mic is live. Oh no, I was just about to, go off on a one.
Oh no,
thank God.
You were just about to start swearing. Oh no. Oh dear. Okay, and we're back. That was a lovely first segment. A nice little,
that's all right. I enjoyed myself.
Meditative journey through religion. And we're gonna
I don't feel like you're taking me seriously.
We're now going to take a hard.
How dare you not take me seriously?
I've been very stressed this entire time, Hugh. This has been very stressful to me.
Here I am trying to convert you to Buddhism. How dare you?
Those of you can see he's been handing me pamphlets in the break. I've got 10 of them now.
I tried to force his legs into a yoga position, but he just wasn't doing it.
I'm not flexible enough. I'm not flexible enough, Seb. Yeah. Okay, we're now going to take a hard switch from a casual talks about our experience to the meaning of life.
Yes!
Why are we here?
Just to suffer, yeah.
So, at the end of the last segment, you brought up the concept of chiseling at a mountain to try and get a concept of what that is. Would you like to expand on that point?
Would I like to expand? I would like to. So I don't mean it in the sense, because I think words are great, but they obviously they carry along because thank you. Right, yeah, full stop. There we go. We're done for the week.
Bye, Seb.
See you later. Yeah. But obviously they carry with them a locked concept.
Yeah.
So when I'm using it's quite a good way of saying, when I use the word God or Buddha, I'm just looking at one face of the mountain. It doesn't reflect its entirety. In fact, and I think I said this in the break, that in order to sort of get a full view of the mountain, you almost have to be the mountain, or you have to be the mountain.
I am mountain.
Oh, why did I say that?
I am mountain, hear me roar.
No, but you've got to almost have a full overview of it.
Yeah, of course.
And that's sort of impossible in life to have a full overview. I mean, that's where, in order to understand this stuff, you have to understand the whole universe, and you can't really.
So you're saying, in order to have a solid grasp, it would require knowledge that is literature that is just simply not available to us.
I think so. So you can always have like a sublime sort of feeling about it, because this stuff sort of is through feeling. There's nothing I can tap on and be like, there it is. But it's it's just. It's all about feeling and So
would you say your goal, or at least in this concept, is finding what true meaning is, or getting as close to it as possible, or is it making your own meaning?
For me, meaning is simply being. Have you heard of this present moment stuff?
Yeah,
obviously
it's being present.
Yeah, obviously it's a bit of a meme, but it's about sort of being conscious, and that's what meditation is. Just being conscious and aware. And I think that's the meaning of life, because once you're conscious at every point, you're constantly aware of what's going on. If there's a thought I feel, I'm aware of it, I let it pass, I embrace it, I let it happen. I don't respond in anger, I simply respond from the depths of what makes us humans good, as in I can react with love, I'm not seeing things falsely, I'm not caught up with the fact that Hugh, you once, punched me or something. I don't think you have, that's just an example, right, just in case anyone's wondering. But, and so, if you're going through a bad time, I'm not caught up with the fact, he punched me one time, I'm just festering in my outrage and my anger, and I'm like, thank God, I can be there, I can be like, actually what, he's another human being, he's in suffering, let's try and be there for him.
So would you say that what you just described is an inherent meaning of life, or is that your goal, or is it merely you trying to get there? Is it you trying to get to the inherent meaning of life and the purpose of existence, or is it making your own meaning and finding what gives you purpose?
I think I don't know. I think it's one of those ones where it's like you can almost get too caught up with trying to find the meaning of life, because the meaning of life is right here, right now. And that's as in I'm never going to exist outside of right now. The future's there, the past is there, but I'm living right now, and so in that sense, that's all I can do. Yeah. So if I'm trying to pursue something, the meaning of life is to become really, really rich. Fair enough, but that all leads ultimately through now. If that's really what I want to do, it's right now. And so that's the kind of the overarching thing. Even above that is, well, you've got to live your life right now, and so it's about being aware and present of what's going on right now, so that you don't miss it. Because ultimately, you're not alive forever. So let's make sure you're aware of a good deal of it.
So one could describe it as a rather grounded concept of meaning, in terms of the meaning of life is just to live. And to be present.
I don't think you can do anything beyond that. I mean, what other meanings of life are there?
I think there's obviously a lot of ones where
they all derive from that. Is my point. So that's the overall. So obviously, there's in Buddhism, there's to achieve enlightenment is a goal.
Well, to get into heaven.
But how do you do that? The means is through the now. So I think a lot of this stuff focuses too much on the ends, and then there's some sort of weird, sort of mystical path in which at some point I shall float my way towards eternal happiness, but I don't actually have a means through which. So living right now is the means, and then if I do that, I will achieve the ends.
So I think my concept of what meaning is in life is almost. I feel like we've taken very different paths. We've ended at very similar conclusions. Uh-oh.
Is that a fire alarm?
That is a fire alarm.
Are you joking?
I guess we'll be back. Oh, that is a fire alarm. All right, sorry everyone.
Oh, right.
I'm gonna have to put up
the
sound thing. We'll be back.
The Popo, they're shutting us down, mate.
I know, they're
coming back at you.
They're shutting us down. All right, sorry.
Police
everyone.
harassing me.
Hi everyone, we're back. Hello.
Oh, that got the blood pumping. Though.
That did. There was
adrenaline kicking in.
If my editing is good enough, you won't have noticed that there was a fire alarm.
But if you're watching live, is anyone watching?
Is that a thing?
It's
the radio set. People don't watch live.
Oh, they listen.
And
live.
no one listens either. No one listens either. Anyway, let's start. Okay, we don't have as much time now. Let's dive straight back into it. So we can probably go for another 5 minutes. I'll have to do an ad at some point, but that's fine. Okay, so back on this. I was about to talk about meaning and my concept of it.
Do it.
So, in my opinion, I was an odd niche, I would say, of philosophical opinion on meaning, where I think there is no inherent meaning to existence.
No, absolutely.
I don't think there is. I think there is no reason we're here.
There's no built-in, carved-in meaning to any. Absolutely.
And I would say that So if someone asked me what's the meaning of life, I would say it's to make your own. It's to make your own meaning and make some form of purpose. I
will say that applies to humans, I think. Because I think the meaning of life for a tree is to exist. There's nothing beyond that. We give that value because it is. The tree doesn't care about meaning. It doesn't, the tree simply exists. So if you want to call that the meaning of life. It's our
existentialism that perhaps elevates us beyond, for example, an animal which exists only to survive.
Yeah. And I think there's value in seeing that existence can be in of itself a meaning, but you shouldn't get trapped up with the idea of meaning as a powerful concept. Simply to exist is meaning, and anything beyond that, you can make meaning beyond that, but I don't think there's any intrinsic meaning. The universe doesn't care about meaning. It's just something we give value to it, and
the other day I was speaking to our friend Joel, shout out to Joel,
big up,
about religion and meaning, specifically about meaning, really. And I said quite rather glibly, and I said kind of rudely, as a joke, I said, religion to me is another mere distraction at the laughable void that is life, which is actually a reference to
one too many double espressos.
That was in the Pace Common Room at 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
with one too many espressos. No, and I tend to reference John Paul Sartre, everyone's favorite nihilist. Have you heard about his theory of like staring into the void and like the sadness of kings? I can't remember what it's specifically called.
I've heard that. I think that's the Nietzsche quote, though, isn't it? That if you stare at the void too much, the void stares back, kind of thing. So, I think that's meaning something else.
So I believe it was Sartre's theory where he basically said, he kind of gave a theory. I think it might have been Nietzsche, actually. I have no clue. Anyway, one of them gave a theory why, like, they were talking about kings, but you know, we apply it to modern day like celebrities works as well. Why they tend to be a bit depressed or like miserable, and he would say that once you're at a point of you have everything in life and you know you've achieved things, you've everything you've wanted to do. You're forced to confront like the inherent meaningless of life beyond what your own ambitions are, and that's what he describes as staring into the void.
I think it's meaningless only if you place value on what you have or you're right. You forget the fundament, and that's where I talk about, you know, living in the. You can never feel meaningless or, you know, that you're staring at a void if you just remember you are alive right now and just sort of, you know, breathe it in, breathe it out, kind of thing. If you base your identity on things that you have and your aspirations. At some point, when you have fulfilled those, where do you go from them? Well, there's no purpose left because you've already sort of bound yourself within that confines of, well, you know, if I become a lawyer, I shall be happy. I'm now a lawyer. I have earned lots of money. Why am I not happy? Well, there's nothing left for me to do here because, you know, there's nothing beyond that. Whereas simply living right now, there's always going to be something beyond that.
What would you say to someone who hears what you just said and thinks, you know, oh, that's a load of hippie rubbish?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I do realise I'm coming off like that.
I need something to distract me from the horrors of death. Like a lot of people would describe religion as a concept of almost like a vaccine to the fear of death, to say like, I think life doesn't end when we think it does.
I mean,
would you say that simply saying living now is enough?
Can people
escape their existential dread?
Can people skip their existential? I think they can, because they're dreading something that will never happen in the way they think it will happen, and is inescapable. So, are you scared of death?
Not really.
No, because you know it's something that will happen. If I think about death,
I'd be scared if it was at that door.
You're scared of, but it's not. You know, and it's something that, you know, I could die, you know, in the next second. You know, I could have a heart attack. I'm gone. See you later. This radio show becomes a lot more morbid,
but very successful.
Very successful. A man died making this.
I guess some very good clickbait.
So in that sense, you know, there's the only thing I'll ever have is right now. So as long as I remember that and keep that in mind, you know, I could die. I could become rich and successful. I could also become a goat herder in Tibet. You know, we don't know, but that sort of speculation, and it's the same thing with people who often live quite a lot in the past, quite nostalgic. You know, there's a lot of bitterness about right now because what was amazing and brilliant, but they don't realise that's never going to happen. You're right here, you're right now. Boom, come on, you know. And that's easier. I mean, that's the sort of the fundamentals. That's far easier said than done.
Of course,
like it's and that's one thing I do. You know, I'm through like meditate. That's one way in which I can further that for myself. But other people do it through prayer, through that kind of thing. But you know, and there's other things. You know, for some people when they're like drawing, that's quite cathartic in that sense because they're just there right now. You know, sports people when they play football or something. You know, they're just right there right now. They're playing football. There's nothing else going on, and that's the sort of the purest nugget of existence that you can live.
One could almost say that this drive for existential surety is self-defeating in its purpose.
Because it's already here, man. It's here. You know, you don't need any greater overarching thing. You simply just you know, the Dalai Lama's happy because he's right here, right now, dude. He doesn't need to. You know, I'm gonna. I mean, obviously, I think he does want to liberate Tibet, but he doesn't. You know, he's not set his entire happiness conditional upon that. And so, the moment we stop putting things conditional on happiness and start, you know, being happy now, then boom.
One could say that, you know, life is enough.
And can I just say it's far easier said than done. I do realise that. I'm not trying to sort of come off.
Just chill out, guys.
Yeah, guys. Just
why don't we all just be like nice to each other?
Yeah, it's just.
Speaking of being nice to each other. I'm going to play a song.
Do it.
There's a less smooth segue there. This is Muramasa, featuring Ellie Rosell, Teenage Headache Dreams. Enjoy. Hello, back. For those of you who couldn't see, Seb was currently dabbing. He was dabbing on the mic.
Dabbing.
He was dabbing on these haters.
No. I was just skanking a little bit.
This is the radio, Seb. No one will ever know
exactly. What I've been up to. Or not. Exactly. I'm not wearing any trousers.
Okay, we don't have much time, so we're going to dive straight into our next topic. Unfortunately, the fire alarm. And let's go straight into the role of religion in politics.
The role of religion. Oh,
yeah. Do you think
8 minutes to talk about that? Hello.
We'll solve the like we did. We solved the meaning of life.
Yeah, we solved the meaning
in even
of life.
less time.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that's true.
Seb, do you think religion should play any role in politics? And if so, how?
Should it? By religion, what do we mean? Are we talking about institutions, or are we talking about the personal, spiritual institutions? I don't think you should. I think they can do, but they shouldn't have any opinion higher than anyone else's. They shouldn't have any more clout. So I don't think, separation of church and state. Yeah, absolutely. That's a fundamental one, because at the end of the day, religion is in the institutionalized form is a choice, and you shouldn't have that forced on you. It can play a role in politics, but it shouldn't need to, and it shouldn't be a requirement to be into politics.
Unfortunately, this is another one of the topics where we very much agree on.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do the devil's advocate classic.
Yeah, okay.
So, for example, in the House of Lords, there are still, obviously, ministers who have seats, and they, have a say on some things.
Ministers, do you mean bishops?
Bishops, same thing.
Yeah.
Religious people.
Bishops, because it's church, it's Church of England.
And I guess they would say, well, Christianity as a religion is still, I guess, technically like a minority group, or it's a group that needs representation, especially I'm sure, like, in an increasingly less
more secular
in a more secular society, more than ever these religions need representation.
The House of Lords one's interesting, because obviously Christianity is a part of our tradition, so it kind of ties into what role do we see for the House of Lords. Yeah, I don't think there should be a prioritization of bishops perhaps over other representatives. So get a Muslim, get an imam in there, get a Sikh person in there. Why not? I think if we're going to represent them all, why not? So I don't think.
So you'd be fine with it as long as there was an equal level of representation along each line of the major
representation. I mean, I'm not sure. You can never equally. I mean, you shouldn't have you could just do like a proportion of 40% of England are Christian, 10% are Muslim. So let's have 4 bishops and 1 imam.
House of Jesus.
A house of
House of Jesus.
Where they all just discuss my religion's right, yours is wrong. Yeah.
It's like putting them in the playpen. You go argue your religion. We're gonna go solve the NHS.
So I don't think it's like the most malicious interference. So it's part of tradition. I think if you were designing a House of Lords these days, you probably would get rid of the bishops, I think, because we very much like religion to be a private
it's not
sort
a
of activity. So even though sort of morality from religion can and does go into the public sphere, I don't think institutions necessarily should have a role within politics, because it's not.
Okay.
And then I was just going to say, and then obviously sort of private spirituality, you can never separate that from, I think, David Cameron went to church quite a lot. I think he was a Christian.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those ones where it will always play a role, but whether you have the institutionalised, because, again, it comes back to the point of, if institutionalised religion wields a form of power, do we want that within politics? Probably not. We want it to be a sort of a level playing field, rather than, because otherwise you could just get bishops yelling you're all morally wrong. And do you want that in politics? I mean, there has to be an ethical element at some point, But whether you want that institutionalized form of power in it is, I think, perhaps a step too far.
So could you say if you were suddenly put in charge tomorrow, you wouldn't necessarily get rid of them?
No,
because it's a traditional thing. But if you were restarting from scratch, you probably wouldn't include them.
Yeah, it's the same.
Not really
it's the same thing with my views on the Queen. Like if I had complete power and I could do whatever I wanted, I wouldn't get rid of the Queen. I wouldn't get rid of the monarchy. If I was building a new state, I probably wouldn't include the monarchy.
That makes sense.
But it's not worth the hassle to get rid of it. So with the House of Lords one, it's like, well, yeah, they've got bishops in there. If they're redesigning a new House of Lords, they should think about the role that it has. Do they make it equal representation, or do they get rid of them? But I'm not intrinsically going to slash it simply because tradition has a value to it.
My favourite, I guess it's kind of like a joke around like the monarchy, like I guess the House of Lords in a similar situation. It's like on the point of whether restarting or whether you would get rid of them or not, is I always like to say if I was put in charge, I would ban the monarchy, bulldoze Buckingham Palace and turn it into a Costco.
Yeah, turn it into Costco.
Specifically a Costco.
Or just make it the Glorious Leader's Mansion.
Oh, and I'm the Glorious
Leader, yeah.
Oh no, oh dear. Okay, we have a very short amount of time.
We do, yeah.
So I have
to be fair, I don't think the fire alarm actually took that much
out
of
it. Didn't take a crazy amount of time.
3 or 4 amount, but it's just gone quite quickly.
Very, very big question in a very short amount of time. The fire round. Seb, do you think religion overall had an overall positive effect or a negative effect on humanity as a species in 2 minutes?
Give me 10 seconds to think about
that. In 2 minutes. So so whilst you're thinking, I'll present some of the things. So religion, I'll spend like kind of both sides. So obviously there's the science side. A lot of people think that religion held back science in early years. Other people would say no, it's facilitated it. There are people who would say that the amount of human lives cost.
I've cracked it.
There was like human life cost of 1.7 million died in the Crusades alone. Subjugation of women was often
1.7 million in the Crusade. Is that
according to Google?
It's really interesting.
Yeah, and apparently, and there was an interesting article I read about subjugation of women, and it basically argued that like a lot of those sort of power dynamics were bred out of religious texts, which is perhaps if we had double the workforce, it would have been a million times better at this point.
Yeah. That's an interesting point.
A minute 20. Go.
Is religion? I don't think it's intrinsically bad. It can be used. I'm going to take the typical cop-out answer. It's not intrinsically bad.
Okay.
It's how you use it, how you institutionalize it, what you use that for. I don't think Jesus Christ was what he wanted. The church that he wanted to set up would not have been bad. The Buddhism that Buddha set up would not have been bad. What's the institution in Islam? Whatever. I don't think that he meant to be.
It's not an. But could you say that
it's not an intention? But like anything, you can use it. You can use it and abuse it.
Could you say that the fact that it's manifested in so many negative ways would indicate some form of inherent problem? Because it's. Or you could say there's very few cases where it hasn't failed at least once.
So widespread that, like human beings, it will fail a lot.
Okay.
So wherever there are human beings, a better question is perhaps, is it within humans to fail? And I think, because religion is probably as widespread, spirituality, all of that, the sort of more abstract stuff, is wherever there are human beings, you will have that stuff. And wherever there are human beings, you'll get failures, you will get, the worst side. And so religion is a conduit through which you can channel that.
Very interesting. Okay. That is the end of the show.
Thank you
so much for coming on, Seb.
It's been a pleasure, actually. I hope I haven't rambled too much.
No, it's been fine. They'll be the ones to tell you.
They'll be the ones
and
to
they
tell
can
me.
They can tell you from where, Seb. You can plug something right now, a Twitter or a Facebook if you want to. Your radio show. I don't have your radio.